Evening. It's great to see and hear everybody. I have 1 minute after 7. I want to be respectful of the time that we have together. So let's go ahead and get started. If folks join in, great. If not, Heather Anthony is recording today's webinar for posterity's sake, and we're sharing these links for folks that need them. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bigham, and we are going to talk about GAMUT and how we can make a GAMUT better for you, and how we can continue to work together as an industry, improving the transport quality for our patients and their families. So we'll go ahead and get started. I am really excited about both today's webinar, but also more so about the future of GAMUT and the future of the QI Collaborative. And so we have some slides to guide today's conversation. We'll start with some introductions, and then we'll talk briefly about where GAMUT has been, but spend most of the time talking about where it's going. And then we'll leave plenty of time for questions. So a couple of faces. My name, again, Mike Bigham, and we are Hamilton Schwartz is his likeness is here, and he's on the screen as well. Hamilton and I have a long history together, but really have been talking about transport quality for 13 years, 14 years together. And so we've, put a lot of thought and emotion and energy into the work of GAMUT. And so we're excited to share this update with you all. But I think more importantly than Hamilton and I are the folks on this slide, Heather Anthony and Lisa Shaver, whose names you see, and they're on the screen, and then Mike Beckard, who's sort of a new member of the GAMUT team. But her and Lisa have really been, over the last several years, as GAMUT got sort of bigger and more unwieldy and harder for Hamilton and I to keep up with, Heather and Lisa have been so thoughtful and so dedicated to keeping the GAMUT team together, keeping the product as good as it could be for you all. And so we're grateful for them, and we're grateful that they're going to continue to partner with the GAMUT team moving forward. So for those that don't know the storied history of GAMUT, in 2014, so I mentioned Hamilton and I for probably, again, 13 or 14 years have been talking about quality improvement and transport and measurement, but that sort of culminated in 2014 after a series of Ohio discussions, a series of discussions at the American Academy of Pediatrics Transport Section, a series of discussions at the Air Medical Physician Association. Really took some consensus quality improvement or quality performance metrics and put them together in the platform we currently know as GAMUT. And over the years from 2014 until now, we've grown to, depending on how you count, as a program with multiple individual submissions, we're somewhere between 350 and 430 transport entities that are submitting data or have submitted data or have signed up or had some interaction with the GAMUT database, and it actually interestingly continues to grow year over year, and so that has hopefully reinforced our understanding, which there's a desire for our industry to have a performance improvement or quality improvement collaborative. And so our very origins of GAMUT were really built on the premise of helping each of our programs individually improve, but also helping the industry as a whole improve. And so in order to accomplish that, we really focused on trying to establish strict and consistent metric definitions for things that matter in the transport of our patients, and then develop a system for us to track in aggregate and report in aggregate and compare performance, looking for higher performing programs that we can learn from, and also look for areas where our own individual programs are maybe lagging, our peers are lagging behind the industry performance, to say where should we focus our sometimes limited quality improvement resources. And then I think the other part that really sort of got us energized is this premise of that folks it actually worked. People actually spent time collecting the data, looking at their performance, and then we almost every time Hamilton and I, exchange emails with some of you or run into you at meetings, we hear stories about how folks took their underperforming metrics and really committed to improving them, and it really resulted in enhanced care for their patients. And that was sort of, I think, probably affirmed our vision that this was having an impact on our patients, and so we were excited about that, and so we continued to try and make GAMUT better. Unfortunately or fortunately, GAMUT has probably begun to plateau a little bit. The volume of programs participating, the amount of time and energy needed to sort of care for the care and feeding of GAMUT has gotten fairly significant, and at the same time, there are more participants. There's more active feedback. There's more ways that programs want to use GAMUT and the data better. They want it to be easier to submit data. They want it to be easier to analyze their data. And we sort of were faced, I think, with a decision to either just keep doing what we're doing with GAMUT and maybe not responding in as timely a manner as we would like, or maybe not, maybe creating a product that's as good as we would like, or more so as good as it could be to help facilitate your program's improvement or the industry's improvement, or we needed to make it better. And after a fair bit of deliberation, we really decided that the reason that we did this work together with many of you, and hopefully the reason the industry is benefiting from this, is reason enough to make that decision to do more with GAMUT, to make it better, that we either needed to throw up our hands and abandon it, or we needed to really make it better. And we couldn't see ourselves throwing our hands up in abandonment of GAMUT. And so I think one of the sort of the most exciting things that Hamilton and I, and probably many of you offline, have talked about is that we've taken the chance to look at the impact on the industry as a whole. You all have looked at your individual performance, but we've looked at the impact of the industry as a whole, and it's really demonstrated that rising tide of GAMUT has lifted all boats. Our industry-wide performance has improved around many of these metrics, and almost all of the programs are better 1 year after joining GAMUT than they were at the time of joining GAMUT around some of these key metrics. And like, that is the sort of the goosebumps on my arm impact of GAMUT. It really is genuinely why we've done this, and genuinely makes us commit to the fact that if we do it yet better, and if we do it with yet the additional metrics that you all endorsed as consensus important, that second set of metrics, that we should have that impact in even a greater way and an even broader way. And so we were really committed to making GAMUT better, and thus making the care better for our patients and families. And so we made the decision, and maybe the TNT dynamite is a little bit of a profound analogy, but we really said, okay, if we're gonna sort of commit to making GAMUT better, can we significantly adapt the current platforms, or do we need to say, love the legacy of the REDCap database and our studios platform, love that legacy, but really put it aside and build a sort of a ground up better platform? And we chose the latter, which is to really take all of the things we loved out of the old systems, and plus the years of feedback that we've been getting from you, and really commit to making a new and better GAMUT. And we really haven't blown up the old database and dashboard, but we've put it aside, or we'll be putting it aside for a brand new product. And so the new product, and again, maybe just for one more sort of context, there are almost 2 million patient contacts in the database. So when you look at your program's performance around a single metric, not every single metric has 2 million patient comparisons, but just to give you the scale of transport context. That's a fairly significant comparison group. So when we talk about the gamut average, we really think it's fairly representative of the industry performance. And we know that we've got that original set of metrics that have been in gamut database, and we've had that new set of metrics that have been sitting there and ready to be launched. But we really made the conscious decision when we were going to build out this new database that we just wanted to time the launch of those new metrics with the launch of the new database. And we also have been hearing from many of your programs are CAMES accredited, and we've really been hearing that it would be beneficial to have a sort of an accreditation ready report that really summarizes performance and performance over time. And so that's one of the sort of the additional features that we build into the gamut database. And I'll go through some bulleted points of some of the new features that we're going to have in our upgraded and new gamut database. But then I just like words are sort of half interesting, but then I have some screenshots that we think are pretty exciting and some demonstrations that we think are pretty exciting about the new gamut database. And so in the old gamut database, we had some benchmarking. So you'd put some data in every night, those data would update. But we really had a limited ability to create a comparison group, or really limited ability to customize either a time window or what type of program you might be comparing to. We've built all of those into the new database, and I have some demonstrations of that. So you're really going to be able to do a little bit more instead of an apples to the entire industry. You're going to be able to do a little more of an apples to apples comparison of similar programs. And you're going to be able to look at that if you're really concerned about your own program over a year or 18 months or 3 years or 5 years. You're going to be able to customize that time range in a much more effective way. We think the data input is still going to be straightforward, still going to be simple. We think that we've got several new reporting functions, which I'll show you, not only the time period in the customized comparison group, but some nice new executive summaries that we think are going to be able to be pretty summative and tell a lot of the story in a fairly concise view. We've got all of the features that were in REDCap, but sort of built upon them into a better way of some of the data verifications. Numerators can't be bigger than denominators and other things like that. We've got some better interactive graphical data. We have some enhanced statistical process control charts, and that will really do some of the data shifts. If you're a real data-minded person and looking at performance over time, we have some time series charts that really demonstrate improvement or shift in the desired direction using the sort of those classic rules of QI. Also, we've always called GAMUT a quality improvement collaborative, and Hamilton and I have heard feedback from you. We've done really just one large scale collaborative learning. It was around waveform capnography for intubated patients that had, I think, 17 or 18 programs participated. And it was awesome. We loved getting to know you guys in that way. We loved the collective impact around that performance metric, but we've sort of been disappointed that we haven't been more sort of forward looking and continue some of those QI collaboratives. And so we think this isn't necessarily solely tied to the database itself, but tied to the fact that quality improvement in a collaborative model works. It's worked in lots of different venues. And so alongside of the buildup of the enhanced GAMUT database, we really want to reinvest in the collaborative nature of GAMUT as well, not just the data input and data output. We're going to have even an enhanced platform of communication. We aren't going to discard those things that we've really enjoyed, like the listserv, but we are going to have some more enhanced discussions around those metrics and a real standardized process to vet some of those metrics where clarification's desired. And I think one of the other things that we've been probably not as effective at is there have been some programs that have really built a better mousetrap. They have found a way to knock it out of the park related to some of the metrics, and not in a gaming the data sort of way, but they really committed to changing some processes around one or the other of the metrics. And and we've heard those stories, and we've loved hearing them, but we haven't shared them with the collaborative. And again, the idea of a collaborative is that we, all teach and all learn, and we've really probably not done that as effectively. So we've built into this new database sort of a resource library of you all telling your great improvement stories, and those folks that we've reached out to and connected to, that want to tell their stories. They want to be resources for the industry because they care a lot about the patients they're taking care of in their program, but they also care a lot about all patients, and they want to maybe help those patients. And so those are enhanced features that'll be in the new database. Because the database has a little more personalization available, we're going to see some demographics of your organization alongside of the performance tools. We are going to allow you to export data if you have a specific platform or a specific venue that you'll want to export data into. You're going to do that, but we want to make the data reporting even better than it has been, so you won't feel the need necessarily that you have to export the data, if you can get what you need out of the visualization tools within the new GAMUT database. And we're going to allow you to store some of those reports. You don't need to rebuild reports time after time, but store some of those reports. And I already mentioned that resource library. Above and beyond sort of looking and learning from those better practices, we're going to have some QI training resources available as well. So if you're trying to work on a project and you want to work on it with a team, either you or your team might together learn from some of those little small snippets of QI training. And then one of the legacies of GAMUT has been this twice annual report, the biannual report. And so I know a lot of programs, we've gotten feedback, really hinge on that report. They sort of use that as a stop point to make sure they have their data updated at least twice annually. And they also use it as a really active twice annual update with their leadership team, perhaps, or even leaders outside of the transport team. And I think we don't want to disrupt that flow that allows you to talk about your team's quality performance with whatever that biannual report cadence allows. And so we're going to keep that cadence, but we're going to make it an even better report, both in visualization and in the sort of the story those data tell. And so we've got some screenshots we're going to show. In all of the steps of reimagining GAMUT, we've sort of hinged on these this measure, report, and improve, that 3-step process that's been foundational to us. But we've also really hinged on your feedback. We've got reams of notes that Hamilton and I and Lisa and Heather have collected over the years. I mean, you'd be shocked how many of your archived emails we dug up to say, remember when Stephen Hancock said this? And we would go back and say, okay, can we build that in the new database? Does it make sense? And sometimes we get 4 or 5 of the same comments, that we sort of collated those together, and we knew when it was going to be time, we'd be able to start to integrate those. So it is possible you gave us an idea that we didn't incorporate, but we incorporated a lot of your ideas over time. And so I think one other thing that we've done, which we think might be a little bit easier, is we've begun to cohort some of the metric categories. Historically, metric 1 was something around neonatal temperature. Metric 2 was something about waveform capnography. Metric 3 was about blood transfusions. Metric 4 was about ventilator use. They were sort of in a sequence that quite frankly, they were in the sequence that we first achieved consensus around, and they just were married to that. We referred to them as metric number 12 or something like that. And so if you've always referred to it as metric 12, it might disrupt you a little bit because we're cohorting them. But we think this will be better. And this is one of the points of feedback, that if you're really sort of focusing as a team on airway, we're going to start to collate those airway management metrics. If you're focusing on invasive and non-invasive ventilation, you're going to be able to collate those metrics around those. And so we think that might be, instead of a metric of focus, maybe allow an area of focus that you can sort of display and analyze together. And so you can see the categories that we have here. We think that'll be helpful. And again, based on the feedback that you all have given us over time. And one of the things, whenever there's change, we always hope it's for the better, but we also don't want to lose the legacy. You heard me say we have almost 2 million data contacts. You guys, many of you have been putting data in the database for years, and we're very intentional about, as we transition from the REDCap database and the legacy of the REDCap database, that we aren't going to just get rid of all that old data, and nor are we going to make you start again at point zero in terms of generating metrics and metrics. We really are going to do an entire data transfer on your behalf from the old database to the new database. And we're going to keep the old executive summaries in an archive fashion under your new program login, but we're also going to transfer all of the old data. The consequence of that is there will be, as we get ready to launch, there'll be a bit of a blackout window where we're going to shut down the old REDCap database. We're going to pull people's data over, and then we're going to turn on the new database after we've already pulled all of that old data over. So you're not going to lose that historical tracking. There are a few elements that there's new metrics that aren't in the old database. Of course, there won't be any data transfer tied to those. Everybody's going to sort of start into the new database at hopefully at a fairly similar time frame. But if your program's sort of getting caught up in some logistics during the transfer, you'll be able to back enter data. If you keep it locally, you'll be able to back enter data once you sort of get connected to the new database. But what we won't do is, once we do that entire en masse data transfer, we're going to turn off the REDCap database because we can't sort of keep pooling data even after we've made that first data transfer, because the computers start smoking and our data, people like Lisa, get angry because it's just hard to keep track of what's new data and what's old data. And so that's just one thing to sort of anticipate, and we'll be very explicit about when that sort of turn off time is. And so we'll give you enough time to get some additional data entered. If you're sitting on a pile of data on your desk, we'll give you some time to get that entered before we turn off the REDCap database. Then it'll all be available in the data transfer. So now we're going to move into some screenshots. So I don't want this to sound like a dream. It is a dream, but I don't want it to sound like some hypothetical, like we think we're going to do this. We've actually been spending we spent all of this year and most of the end of last year every Friday morning working with our database builders and our GAMUT team here to really build out this sort of the key elements. What's the front door look like? What does the establishment of your program look like? What does the data entry look like? What do the data reports look like? And what does the website look like? So we'll start to go through some of those views. And I should have said this all along. If you have questions, you can raise your hand and stop me. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. We're going to finish in enough time that we can go through some more questions at the end as well, if it's not sort of immediate, urgent. So this one thing that we've heard from you all is you desire the ability to sort of manage your own program's access and reporting. And so we have built that so you don't need to like beg Heather or Lisa to add somebody or take somebody away. We're going to basically let you as a program manage your program. And so some programs have multiple bases that submit independently or regions that submit their data independently. And so if Akron Children's has 2 main transport programs, they might have 5 ground ambulances and 2 aircraft, but we really have 2 discrete entries. I can enter as Akron Children's Hospital, but then have my two individual programs underneath our organization. And then I, as the organization's administrator, I can control either for a single program within my organization or for multiple programs within my organization. I can control who has full access, meaning they can upload data, they can enter data, they can download, they can do whatever they want. And I can also determine if we want read only. So maybe a medical director like me who's just going to get in and mess things up. Like I can't actually enter anything, but I can view any of the reports. I can generate any of the sort of the data exporting functions, but I can't change any of the data entry. Or it can be the person who gets forced distributed our biannual reports just on a distribution list. We have those features available. So So we also have a sort of an entry-level dashboard view, and I'll drill this down a little bit so you can see at the very top, once you log in, we'll have any key communications. These will be, not necessarily all of the elements from the listserv, but maybe some key things that the GAMUT administrators want to make sure we need to know. We'll have sort of a countdown until our final data entry date before the biannual reports are generated. We'll have some data status if there are records missing. We think those will be easy to view and easy to access. You can click in any of those and get to what you need to. And then if you're looking at, I might have, again, multiple programs as Akron children. I can look at those programs. We're going to see some discrete demographic data. We know you guys track volumes and transport types all the time in your program, but this might just be another way to have those readily available. And it's also going to let us to do a little more of that enhanced apples to apples comparison that I alluded to. So we're going to look at patient types, and we're also going to look at modes of transportation. We're going to look at some volumes. You can click in any of these and get into the reporting tools. We also, if you're an organization that has multiple programs, there's able to look at that as sort of a roll-up number as well. That might or might not be relevant to you depending on the nature of your transport program or your transport organization. Then we're going to be able to look at our the entirety of the GAMUT population. These numbers are all made up, obviously, but we have some regional program locations as well. And if we want to look at a more sort of a regional view, we have the ability to look at some of our regional program distribution as well. We have our non-US friends here, and if there are better ways to regionalize our non-US programs, we can do that as well. But it gives you a sense of what the GAMUT comparison population is. And then if we get into the data reporting tools, this is sort of what I alluded to. So we can build reports that allow us to particularly select what the start date is, the end date for our report. We can pull a drop down here that allows us to pick whatever metrics we're looking at. We can look at it across our entire organization, so all of the programs that are under this big umbrella, or we can look at it at a singular program, and then we can compare to the entire GAMUT population, which we've done historically. Or you can compare, like if you're an organization that has 15 programs within it, you can compare to other programs within your organization. We aren't going to allow Akron Children's to compare explicitly to Sheffield Children's. Like, I'm not going to be able to pick Stephen's program and compare in that way. We're still going to keep some protection of your program and your program's privacy. But we are going to be able to look at programs that do neonatal and pediatric transport with a predominance of surface and US only, for example. So we're going to be able to customize our comparison group. If you're a program that only does neonatal transports or predominantly does neonatal transports, you're going to be able to build out that custom comparison. If you're a program that does both surface and rotor, you're going to be able to build out that comparison. And so this is something that almost from the day we started, folks have said, it's fine if I compare against the industry, but I really want to compare against programs that are more like ours. And so I won't get into the specifics on how those filters are done, but what we aren't going to do is allow it to get so discerning that it allows it to drill down to Sheffield Children's comparison program. And so we have some filters that if the comparison group gets too small, it'll say we can't produce that comparison because that then might be identifiable. Stephen?
Yeah, Mike, just wondered whether there'd be a filter so you can compare interfacility against interfacility and scene against scene, so you don't mix those programs up. Is that possible?
So not yet. That would fall into the category that folks have desired that we haven't quite built in yet. And so there are, I won't get into details. There's probably about 15 things that are sort of on the next lift. And we didn't want to make the transition like extremely onerous in a way that made it turn everybody off. And so there are some things that are in the parking lot that we're sort of lovingly call this GAMUT 2.0. We're already talking about GAMUT 3.0, and things like that are going to be in the possibility. There's a huge desire to understand the interfacility versus the scene transports. And so we think that'll be a nice add, but we don't have that in the in the current build. And then, and so if you've gone in here and you've made your selections, and then this is what I was alluding to. We have the ability to then look at, you can customize any of these programs on these markers on the right can be toggled on or toggled off, so you can compare it to the type of comparison group that you want. If you want to compare it to the GAMUT, or you wanted to compare it to the achievable benchmark of care, you're going to be able to compare it to those. And I have a quick video. The colors are a little bit different, but just as a demonstration, we have your shifts in your center line based on your reported performance. You can hover over a point and see that data point. You can toggle on or toggle off any of the different comparison groups, and the scale on the side auto scales. And so we really think that folks who really are into the data reporting and really into the data visualization, we've spent, Hamilton and I have spent countless hours trying to teach the programmers about what are the rules for when a center line can shift and when they can't, and different chart types. And we think that this is going to be, for the folks who really like to look at the data in this sort of fashion, are going to be accurate. I think historically we've been a little bit loosey-goosey with our rules around center lines, and we've really spent a tremendous amount of effort to clean that up as well. So hopefully that'll be a nice add, and that's certainly based on the feedback that we've heard from you all. This is probably our crudest mock-up, only because our builders are just finalizing this now, so we don't have a final, but this is the conceptual model of what we're going to include in your biannual report or your executive summary. And we will have the metrics that you're tracking. We'll have your numerator and denominator and your program rates. Then we'll also have a spark line that shows sort of a performance trend over time. And so if you look at this and it's steadily moving up, and even if you're not where the GAMUT rate might be, or the achievable benchmark of care might be, you might be satisfied that you're moving in a favorable direction. So we'll include the GAMUT rate and the achievable benchmark of care. We'll highlight the desired direction, and then this won't be scaled by a number or a percent, but it'll sort of be a range, and we'll have your program's performance and your confidence intervals, and then we'll have the GAMUT performance, and then we'll have the achievable benchmark of care. And if your program's level is below the GAMUT achievable benchmark of care, we're just going to put a little magnifying glass there, because we're going to say, hey, listen, this might be an area where you want to pay attention. And similarly, if you're knocking it out of the park, we might have a smiley face here that says, wow, keep up the good work. And so we'll have some more explanations tied to those. And we think that's going to tell a tremendous amount of information in a very limited geography on an executive summary. And so I think this will be different for you. I think this will help us. I think we'll learn a lot as we start to use this report, and we might find things that it should have or it shouldn't have, and we can together learn that over time. But we think it'll be an enhancement on our previous summary, which was just literally a bolus of letters and numbers that got sometimes a little bit difficult to discern. And so we think this will be a little bit better. Additionally, some of the other databases that some of you might use this sort of trend performance. So every program, what's their performance? Where does our program perform? We have hospital, it'll be your program. Where does it perform compared to the GAMUT average, and where do we fit in that line? We know that sometimes the 100 percenters are one of one, and they're not a real fair comparison, but it will show where your program falls amidst that array of program performance. And so we think that'll be helpful in a different way of visualizing the same data. The one thing that is an unfortunate necessity as we've transitioned this database to really meet the needs of the industry and to really meet the scale of GAMUT is we have been remarkably free forever. And we've loved that. Hamilton and I and Heather and Lisa have done this because we care about the industry, because we care about the work, and we've been, loved the relationships with you and your programs that it's fostered. Unfortunately, it's really become impossible for us to continue to make GAMUT better and not create a fee structure tied to that. And so for us to do, Stephen, some of the things you're talking about, turns out computer programmers don't work for free either. And so for us to make the program better, for us to build out what we think is best for the industry and what you guys have told us loud and clear would be better things for GAMUT and for the industry, there has to be a way for us to support those investments. And Cincinnati Children's and Akron Children's have paid for this for years, and sort of our time's never been covered, but we've had a few grants along the way, but even the grant funding hasn't been enough to do this. And so Hamilton, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, what over time we've realized is the amount of effort that Mike and I have spent in trying to secure funding. We think we certainly would enjoy putting that effort into more of quality improvement, collaborative work, and other stuff, and not trying to burn all our time in sustainability of this. And so it's nobody. At some point, Mike will say this, but nobody's getting rich off this. I promise. This is just to keep this afloat and keep this growing and meeting your needs. Mike and I still have to keep our jobs, and with that.
Thanks, Hamilton. So the way we have chosen now, everybody will have an opinion about how the fee structure was set. If you do 5,900 transports versus 6,100 transports, or 500 versus 2,600. All I can tell you is we spend a fair bit of time, first and foremost, creating a fee structure that is what we think is about as cheaply as we can charge to still allow the investments that are required. And so we've looked at comparison benchmarks in the field that do, benchmarking database. There's neonatal and pediatric, and there's subspecialty benchmarking databases for almost everything. And I have a slide for that, but we're significantly cheaper than all of those comparison databases. And we very intentionally, we would never want the cost of this to be prohibitive for participation. We think the organizations are individually benefiting from this, and we think the industry as a whole collectively benefits from programs participation. And so what we don't want to do is create a level that is cost prohibitive. And so we've really done a fairly extensive analysis. And I think Lisa and Hamilton and Heather will all agree that every time we looked at the numbers, we said, all right, let's make it even cheaper. And then we really got to a point where we are able to keep the program afloat, but not, again, get rich. And we've chosen to adjust by to fee, or to adjust the fee structure based on transport volumes, believing that programs with higher transport volumes potentially have a commensurate revenue tied to those that's going to make this less impactful to their cost. I know that not all programs get paid based on their transport volumes, and so I know it's different in different countries particularly, but we think this is about as fair of a fee structure as we can offer. Here are some of the comparisons. So our highest price point for the biggest programs is $4,500. Some of the other quality improvement databases that we compared against, 25,000, 27,000, 27,000, 12,000, 12,000, 10 to 13,000. We're significantly cheaper in all these. And some of these, like this bottom Vermont Oxford, like 10 to 13,000 gets you in the door. Then if you actually want to do any improvement, there's additional add-on costs. And so we think it's significantly cheaper than our peer structures. But we do think it's a necessity to create a fee structure to allow this to be better for you. And the next thing that I'll share is that we do have our updated website. So if you've not gone to the website lately, we do have an updated website at gamutqi.org. And if you want to navigate that, you can. We think that hopefully this in and of itself gets you excited to think about with your program what it's going to look like to join GAMUT. You can go on the website today and sign up. If you go on the website today and sign up, you'll go to the gamutqi.org. There's a Join Gamut link. If you click on Join Gamut, it'll talk about some of the features I talked about. It'll show some of the visuals, and you'll sort of clarify if you're an existing Gamut user or a new Gamut user. What this is going to do is allow us to marry your new registration to your historical data to make sure when we do that data transfer. And we aren't going anywhere. We're all available. There's an email contact on here. If you need us, you have all of our other existing emails. And so we'll help you navigate this. And so if you get signed up, what we would expect to follow is one of the other things that that the attorneys keep getting disappointed with us about is that we've done all of this without any participation agreements or data sharing agreements, and we think that's awesome. It just shows the grassroots commitment that all of our organizations have had to improving quality. But I think as part of this sort of going from sort of carefree adolescence into adulthood, there are some requisites. And so one of the requisites of adulthood is a participation agreement. So if you sign up, we'll send out the participation agreement. You'll put it through whatever necessary, approval processes that'll take place. And then once we get that fully executed participation agreement, we'll get you all logged in, get you all signed up. We have some instructional videos about how to upload data, how to build reports. And so we'll have those in the help as well. And then once we get your participation agreement, we'll get you signed up, then we'll invoice you subsequent to that. I know some folks have a budget cycle. Some folks have, almost everybody has a budget cycle. And so we aren't ever sure what your budget cycle is compared to one another. And so we'll invoice you, and we tried to make it at a price point that was well below any sort of significant capital approval process in your organization. But even if there's a necessity to get some external approval, we think that it's again at a price point that doesn't make your CFO have a heart attack. And so so that's sort of the sequence. We'll definitely have the participation agreements out to you. We know it's going to take a little time to get those processed, and we are still looking at an I'm not supposed to say, but I'll say we're still looking at a 1st of October start date for the database. But what we won't do is we won't sort of create a real panic for you about sort of some paralysis where your participation agreement isn't executed, you're blocked out of the old REDCap database. And so we know there'll be a little bit of a clunky transition, but we're going to try and make it as painless as possible for you. And we're really hopeful that though the database will likely be turned on by the 1st of October, really hope by the 1st of January we'll have enough of the necessary work together that the database is going to feel right, it's going to feel better, it's going to start to meet your needs, and certainly by the 1st of January. And so that's the sequence. We do have social media. I think we're all not very active in social media, the collective Gamut leadership, and so it won't take you more than like 10 seconds to see everything we've ever posted on our Gamut social media accounts, but we're going to get better at it. My kids keep telling me that they should do it, and I told them I'm not paying them. But I do think that we appreciate the legacy of relationships that we've had with you all. We appreciate your candor and giving us feedback around things that could be better. We ask of your ongoing commitment for the good of hopefully your program, for the good of adding this additional set of metrics, the availability of an enhanced benchmarking. But really, we think our patients and their families genuinely benefit from our collective improvement. And so we're hopeful that you'll continue to be our friends. We hope that you'll also continue to be our Gamut collaborators, and we will continue to commit to spending as much time and energy as we can to help you guys help your programs improve. So with that, I think I'll quit talking. I'll turn off my screen and so I can see you all, and then we can have a chance for any questions. For folks that use Microsoft Teams, you can chat. There's a little chat bubble. You can raise your hand with a question, or you can just unmute yourself and scream. And maybe there was a question that was already in the chat. Lisa, is there anything? Lisa, a question about what percent of programs have greater than 6,000 transports?
I don't have that off my head. I would have to go in and take a look, and certainly it's varied across time too. So it's a little bit dependent. Are we talking about who submitted last year versus historical data? You know, so it's a little bit of a difficult question for me to answer on the fly like that. But we do have ones that have that kind of numbers. You know, they are there, but as a specific percentage of what's in GAMUT, I really just can't estimate something off my head.
I'm gonna guess because I remember we looked at this and I felt like it was
Yeah, I
like
know
it was under 20 or under 25 or something like that. It was a small number, but also that's a rich comparison as well, right? Because it really, I think, is depictive of higher volume to create comparison as well. I'm gonna guess 20 or 25, but I don't think much more than that.
And there was a lot of, I mean, there was so much discussion on our steering committee, the GAMUT steering committee, with representation from all different program sizes. I mean, those ranges changed over about a year, trying to adjust to what representatives from different program sizes all felt was reasonable and fair. So, you know, it wasn't just you know, done in a weekend. Those ranges changed tremendously based off feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Hamilton. Stephen Hancock asked for a copy of the slides. We can definitely, I have your email, so I just sent it to you, Stephen. But Heather can the recording is going to be available. I think she's going to send out a link to the recording or access to a Dropbox link or something for the recording. And so she'll have that available if you want to hear us all drone on. But if you just want to look at the slides, Heather can make those available via a link as well as a PDF so that you can share those with whomever you might need to negotiate participation with.
And if you, and we've offered this too, if anybody is particularly struggling in that regard, please reach out to us because we may have some sort of additional advice on how to, you know, how to sell the benefits of GAMUT.
We've put together, and sort of it's in a near final draft, put together like a one-page executive summary, sort of, so you don't need to maybe walk your leaders through this long slide deck, but rather sort of a, what are you getting? What's the history? What's the future hold? What's the why? And so we have that sort of in a near final version. We'll get out to everybody as well, just as maybe another tool to help explain the benefit. What else? I'm uncomfortable with silence. For those that know me, know that I'm uncomfortable with silence. So any red flags? Anybody in the last 10 minutes go sign up already? We have this is the third of our 4 webinar series. Is that right, Heather? Is this the third of 4, Lisa? Yeah. And so we've already had a fairly brisk uptake in signups. And so I think there's always, like, you know, whenever something's changing, sometimes people like look to their left and look to their right and say, hey, is everybody going to do this? And I will just tell you that I don't anticipate that it's going to go from a rich database with a high volume of comparisons to like Stephen and Hamilton's programs as being the only 2 in the database. We just don't anticipate that. There's been a